Coming up next on NewsNite, we have a special program for you as we spotlight two of Northeast Ohio's most extraordinary places. We're talking football and towpath here. Stay tuned. Welcome to NewsNite for the Easter holiday weekend of 2011. Our regular panel has the evening off, and that means we have the opportunity to bring you a special program package. You know, there are many historical and cultural treasures within our midst, and tonight we have the chance to showcase two of them: Canton's Pro Football Hall of Fame and the region's Ohio and Erie Canalway. First, the place of legendary characters, riveting plot lines, and dazzling performances, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I want to go back in history and have you kind of set the stage for all of us. Why a Pro Football Hall of Fame, and why Canton, Ohio?
Well, historically, there are two reasons why the National Football League selected Canton. One is that even prior to the formation of the National Football League, Canton was a hotbed for professional football. We had the Canton Bulldogs, which was at that time the best-known professional football team in the country. Another historical reason was that September 17, 1920, in downtown Canton, Ohio, the National Football League was founded. So it was actually founded in Ohio, and those two historical reasons caused the league to determine that Canton is the cradle of professional football, and that's why it's located there. A third reason, not historical, but the fact that the local community said that if you build the Hall of Fame here in this area, we will support it like no other area of the country could, and I think we've done that.
Once the decision was made, how did that building get built? What did it take from the community to put it all together? Joe?
Well, it really took a commitment from not only the private sector, but the population. I mean, every individual had a stake in this, and we had leaders, or civic leaders like the Timken Company, really put the muscle to the task. And then we took it from there, and there was a fund drive that matched funds that were originally established by the Timken Company. And the Canton people were able to go to the National Football League when they were bidding for the site designation and say, not only do we have this historical claim that Steve just outlined, but we have raised enough money to begin the project, which no other city in the bidding process was prepared to do at that time. So it was a compelling presentation made by the representatives from the city of Canton that really took it to the finish line, if you will. And then it was up to the community to fulfill all the promises they made.
The hall opened, what was it, September 7th, 1963, and it was 19,000 square feet, which probably in those days seemed pretty big. Since that time, there have been, 3 expansions and 2 major renovations. Compare the hall in '63 to what visitors would see now in 2011.
Well, as one example, in terms of overall size, as you point out, it was only 19,000 square feet. Today, it's 83,000 square feet, soon to become 115,000 square feet. Joe could tell the story better than I. In the early days, when we had only 19,000 square feet, there wasn't much in the way of a collection. Now we have, no question, the world's most significant collection of pro football history, documents, and artifacts. So we've gone from very humble beginnings to something pretty substantial. And then a third point is that in the early days, our artifacts were pretty much on the walls with a plaque below it saying what this jersey was or what's the significance of this helmet or what have you. Today, through modern technology, we use video and sound and vibrance and the voice of the Hall of Famer himself explaining the significance of the artifact that he was associated with. One of my favorites is there's a football on the wall that says, "This is the football that Johnny Unitas threw to break the record for passing yards, 40,000 in his career." And then the video comes up and it shows the game where he throws that pass with that ball, breaking the record, and then it fast forwards Johnny Unitas himself saying, "Yes, I remember that, but the only record that ever mattered to me was wins and losses." So videos like that sort of bring the artifacts to life, and that is pervasive throughout the museum, which wasn't there, obviously, in '63, and certainly is there today.
We thought it was pretty exciting to have a slide machine in 1963.
You're right, Joe. Well, and describe for viewers, what is it like when you go into the Hall of Fame? you know, what do people see? What are they going to get a hold of?
That's an interesting question because the responses, it's different for every person. There's great expectations sometimes that you know, they really anticipate seeing something and then they're pleasantly surprised that there's much more. But there's also people that come in that have really no concept of what they're going to see. They've seen it on television. They've seen maybe kind of some of our standard shots. And we hear more often than not, you know, people that arrive from out of town say, "Oh, I didn't realize it was this big." Mm-hmm. You know, so it really is kind of a surprise package for any visitor. But we try to, you know, bring it to life, as Steve was saying, through the use of technology. But we also realize that there are different tastes for different individuals. So we don't desert some of the traditional approaches as well. We have a storyline that has a beginning but has no end. So we have to be cognizant of that. You know, there are interest levels for everyone, but we can't eliminate a chunk of history for the sake of putting something else in. So there's some real decisions we have to make sometimes, balancing our collection, and part of our renovation and expansion will help us in this, that only 10% of our collection is presently on display. So it really is an opportunity, as we've been doing over the last few years. If you haven't been there in the last couple of years, we've done major renovations there. The Lamar Hunt Super Bowl Gallery is one area where we've really brought the Super Bowl to life in a very, very big and vibrant way, including a theater. But we have been able to bring out a lot more artifacts, and through technology, layer in information, video. You can call up any Super Bowl, any play. You know, it's that type of immersive environment.
Real interactive.
Absolutely. And it provides, to your question, you know, how do they react? Well, it reacts differently to everybody because they're surprised at how much they can do.
Do both of you have a favorite part of the Hall of Fame? And I asked you that because I also want to know, what do guests tell you is their favorite part of the Hall of Fame?
Well, I would say that my favorite part of the Hall of Fame, and I think many visitors would agree with this, is the part where the bronze busts of each of the enshrinees are kept. We sometimes refer to that as the heart and soul of the building. It's the main reason why we're there. Where many of the galleries, as Joe has been pointing out, are very vibrant, very exciting. Football is an exciting, vibrant, loud game, so the galleries are that way, unlike some other museums like an art museum. But then when people walk into the bronze bust gallery, it's a sacred place. They speak in hushed tones. It's almost like walking into a church. And yet, in addition to the bronze busts, which are displayed on the wall, they can go to technology and go to a kiosk and just by touch screen bring up their favorite player or Hall of Famers or who are on their favorite team, or Hall of Famers who play a particular position. And they can see both a written biography, or what they really like to see is the video biography of Autogram or Jimmy Brown or whoever it might be. So that's, to me, that's a favorite place in the Hall of Fame.
Joe, how about you?
I have to agree, and yet, and if you ask me, you know, what my favorite place is, that's obviously it, because it is. We do look at it as the heart and soul, but I also I'm a nostalgia guy. I like the game, you know, that's long gone. As I was telling an audience last night, I missed dirt and mud, you know. So there are aspects of the game that, you know, aren't played the same anymore, and I enjoy reintroducing people to that day gone by.
What is the moments, memories, and mementos gallery? Because I was reading about that.
Well, that's one of the new renovations that we've done in the last few years. So people who haven't been to the Hall of Fame in 3 years haven't seen that. It's a gallery where we take mementos, either jerseys or helmets or shoes or footballs or any other memento of the game or sport, and then bring that to life with the use of a video. So again, you can look at any one of those mementos and interact with it by pressing a button, and the video comes up to show you what the significance of that is. We also have, for example, another favorite. I mentioned the Johnny Unitas, but there's a Roger Staubach display. When you step under the globe, the light comes on and you begin to hear his voice. And in that particular case, he describes how he invented the term Hail Mary pass. Others would say Doug Flutie did it, but Roger gives the story of when it happened, how it happened, the fact that he said a Hail Mary before going out and winning the game. So lots of very interesting things in that mementos gallery.
If my research was correct, the Hall of Fame welcomes almost 200,000 visitors a year?
Yes. And that's really only the tip of the iceberg in a sense, because that's the number of people who come through the door and tour the museum. But in addition to that, at our annual Enshrinement Festival, there are hundreds of thousands of additional people who come to Stark County who may not go through the building, but they're there for the enshrinement ceremony or the game. And then on our internet site, we get over 4 million hits a year, so we got another 4 million people that are visiting us. And then since our enshrinement ceremony and many of the activities during that week are telecast, there's another 20 million viewers who look at Ohio. The press who come to cover the enshrinement ceremony and the game come literally from all over the world. I think Joe determined that the only pro football event that has more credentialed reporters is the Super Bowl itself. So huge in terms of the number of people who interact with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, either in person or through technology.
What kind of economic impact does that have on the Canton area?
Well, it's certainly very sizable. Actually, we did a study, and it's a little dated now, but back in 2005, the numbers would be larger. But in 2005, it was determined that if you just took the spending that occurred by tourists who came from outside of the area, not our local people, but zip codes that were from outside of Stark County, that had an economic impact of $50 million, which is the equivalent of a business with 515 employees. Now, that took into account the festival period and not the entire year. If you were to extrapolate that to our total 364-day-a-year operation, we're sure the economic impact would be twice or three times that number. So it's really, really big. In fact, if you look at certainly Stark County telephone books or government office books, what you see on the cover is the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Same thing at the state level, the Ohio booklets that have to do with statewide tourism, the Pro Football Hall of Fame is featured there. And all of us who live in this area have had the experience when we're traveling to New Jersey or California, wherever it may be, and you tell someone you're from Stark County, Ohio, they say, oh, the home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So pretty pervasive.
As much as there's an economic impact, though, there's got to be like a psychological impact for the Canton community. Talk about that for a minute, Joe.
It's the quality of life impact. And, you know, we all know whether we've been born and raised in Canton, which I have not had the luxury of saying, we do know that from a quality of life perspective, Canton is a place that people are proud of. They're proud to say they're here. They're proud to associate themselves and be involved with the community. We have, as you have heard, I'm sure, many, many times, we have over 4,000 community residents who volunteer their services to make the Pro Football Hall of Fame and Enshrinement Festival a success. And this is not just because they're looking for something to do. It's this pride that they have in their community. It's this good feeling that gives them, you know, this you can't replicate feeling, if you will, that they are a part of it, a part of something very special.
In December, you announced what you call your Future 50 project. And you alluded to it earlier, Steve, when you said the expansion is going to take the hall from the 83,000 square feet now to, what, 115,000? Why, number one, why an expansion? And what are some of the details of that expansion plan?
Well, I suppose the why expansion question is a part of the fact that we have for years been making improvements. It's not as though this is the first thing that we're going to do. You alluded to the other major expansions, but we've been improving the galleries constantly. That is something a museum must do if you want to continue to be relevant and attract visitors. It just so happens that now we're to the point where we need to do something even bigger than we've done in more recent years. We're going to have a new front entrance and a new grand lobby. And part of the motivation for that is that when you go to an attraction, the state-of-the-art tells us, or the studies tell us, that there should be a wow factor. When a person walks in the front door, they should say, wow, this is something special.
Well, don't you have Jim Thorpe there right now?
We do now. No disrespect to Jim Thorpe. We have a wonderful entrance, but it's confined. It's in a space that when you walk in, it's not really roomy. We're going to address that. But we're going to relocate our main entrance from where it is now to an area near our current exit, which will enable us to have a two-story grand entrance. And Joe's working now to develop an entirely new gallery of exhibits that will be there, so people will walk in that door and say, wow, even louder than they say it today. And then the second thing we're going to do, going back to Jim Thorpe and the gallery where he's located, we're going to take all of the offices that are now in that part of the museum and relocate them out so that we can expand the iconic rotunda part of the building, probably to something like 1.5 or almost 2 times its present size, without expanding the exterior walls, just moving offices out so we could have more public gallery space. And again, entirely new exhibits and a new gallery of excitement there. And then thirdly, we are going to construct a research and preservation center. I mentioned we have the world's most significant collection of documents and artifacts, and it's rapidly growing. And we need to make sure that we're housing it in a place which has a proper environment of heat and humidity,
sure,
so that we can preserve it for future generations. So those three things are reasons why now's the time to make that all happen. And it wasn't quite planned, but it's very fortuitous that it all ties right in to our 50th anniversary. In 2013, we will have been there for 50 years, and that's the time that we'll be completing this project.
We're going to continue this discussion now on NewsNite.net.
For more NewsNite content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at NewsNite.net.
In the 1800s, the Ohio and Erie Canal opened the world to Ohio and opened Ohio to the world. It was, as former Congressman Ralph Regular likes to say, the interstate highway system of its time. But less than 100 years after its heyday, the canal was an anachronism, no longer transported goods or people. But the canal and the towpath trail alongside it have been rejuvenated, and they are now a continuing part of our history, opening a world of natural, economic, historical, and cultural resources to us all. Now, that is in due part, to a large part, to the Ohio and Erie Canalway Coalition, and to its director, Dan Rice, who I would venture to say has lived, breathed, worked, and probably even dreamt about the canal for most of the past 20 years. Dan joins us again. He was with us a couple of years ago, 8 or 10, I think.
Yes, ma'am.
And he joins us to remind us again of the treasure that we have in the Ohio and Erie Canalway. Dan, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me back. I really appreciate it.
Tell us, if you would please, give our viewers an overview of the Ohio and Erie Canal and the towpath trail.
Well, you did an excellent job of capturing what this project is all about, and it's so appropriate that we're right here within a stone's throw of the Ohio and Erie Canal here in downtown Akron. And as you so eloquently stated, it really was the interstate highway system of the 1800s. When the canal, before the canals were constructed, you couldn't get products into Ohio, and you certainly couldn't get products out of Ohio. Mm-hmm. And so it literally was a catapult Ohio from a rural, isolated frontier settlement to the third most populous state in the nation. And it really survived up until about the late 1900s. And then it was really started to being revitalized largely through the efforts of Congressman John Sarbaling and Congressman Ralph Regular in the 1960s, because they had this dream to revitalize what some people would kind of refer to as a dirty old stinky canal and bring back some of that community and economic development. And through their perseverance and really outstanding vision and leadership, we have this jewel of a 101-mile Greenway that extends all the way from Cleveland on Lake Erie down to Summit County in Akron, going down to Stark County, and all the way down to New Philadelphia in Tuscarawas County.
How did the perception of the canal change? Because like you said, Congressman Sawyer and Congressman Regular, they were so instrumental. But I mean, it had to take a big change in public perception to bring this about.
You're absolutely correct. And I think what really one of the major factors was certainly having a national park within our boundaries. And when the towpath trail was opened up in 1994, as the story goes, they couldn't build it fast enough, and people were literally right behind them. And I think then people really started to see the opportunity there, not only for recreational purposes, but also for community and economic development purposes. And really, you don't have to look too far than right here in downtown Akron, where you have over $300 million of community and economic development, again, right along the development of the Ohio and Erie Canal. Just a stone's throw from here, north side. Through the incredible vision of Paul and Joel Testa, you've got these new condominiums and housing development just right on the banks of the Ohio and Erie Canal and the towpath trail. And it's having that type of vision and leadership that recognizes that there's a tremendous opportunity that we want to add to the quality of life and really create a legacy for future generations.
But Dan, how was this done? Was it done one piece at a time, 1 mile at a time? I mean, I know that you have worked with, more than 100 different partnerships, right, and you've raised probably $25 million. You know, so describe how this was done.
Well, as you say, it's really one partner at a time. And when we first started working on this project over 20 years ago, there were maybe a couple different partners. Certainly Cascade Locks was active here in Akron and Summit County. Folks down in Navarre were working on the project, and some folks were involved up in Cleveland. And we literally just started just spreading the message of the impact and the opportunities of the development and conservation of this wonderful resource, and literally one partner at a time. And we're really blessed and fortunate to have outstanding community leaders as well as elected officials who really understand the importance and value of these type of resources. Having somebody like Mayor Don Pasquale, who truly understands the benefit for the citizens of the city of Akron. Russ Pry, who understands and recognizes the importance of this for the entire citizens of Summit County. And going by county, city, township, and village, we were able to cultivate the support for the project. And as you say, we work with over 150 public-private partnerships today.
Where are we now? I mean, take us from where you maybe first initially got started. And where is the Canalway now? What still needs to be done?
It's a great question. We're very blessed and fortunate that 82 of the 101 miles of the towpath trail are completed. And so we really only have about 19 miles of that completed. Fortunately, here in Summit County, 2 sections that are yet to be completed right there by the city of Barberton and PPG Industries, as well as the city of Akron, those should be completed by 2012. So by 2012, Summit County and Akron will be the first county and the first city that's connected throughout the region and within its city boundaries and county boundaries. Down in Tuscarawas County, they're really doing a lot of great work. We're actually helping them purchase land, and we're writing grants to actually build sections of the trail. Their goal is actually to have the towpath trail completed by 2020. And they would actually set that date themselves. And I know some people might say, well, that's 9 years away, that's a long time, or how are you going to get it done in 9 years? They're committed to making that happen. The challenge in Tuscarawas County is they don't really have a agency to be the lead agency, so they're really heavily relying upon our organization. Up in Cleveland, they want to get it done a little bit sooner. They're looking within probably about 5 to 7 years. And again, they have most of the money together. It's going to cost somewhere in the range of $30 to $40 million. And the challenge there is you're going through an urban area that's very industrialized. Mm-hmm. There's a land acquisition. There's environmental issues. But there really is the commitment is there from Cleveland Metro Parks, the county commissioners, actually the county executive, as well as the city of Cleveland. So they really are committed to making that happen.
How much more in Cleveland has to be done to get the canal? And that's from where the canal ends now up to the lake?
That is correct, all the way to the lakefront.
And then from the lakefront then, okay, once that section gets done, you can literally go from the lakefront to where at this point?
Well, there are actually a lot of interconnecting trails that connect to the towpath trail, and the way we try to explain it is almost like the trunk of a tree, and you have these various branches. The idea would be there's a lakefront trail that actually literally goes along the lakefront. There's different neighborhood trails that connect into Tremont and other neighborhood connections throughout Cuyahoga County. And as you know, we have the same type of project here in Summit County through the Summit County Trail and Greenway plan.
Now, people would say, okay, it's just a trail, you know? Why is it so expensive? Because I have seen, you know, you just mentioned the costs up in Cuyahoga County. Why does it take that much money to finish this, Dan?
Well, it's a combination of factors. A good example really on either end, we already described the Cleveland area up in Cuyahoga County. Down in Tuscarawas County, some of the land is publicly owned, but some of it's privately owned. And ironically enough, we're actually having to go back and purchase canal lands or former sections of the towpath trail that were at one time publicly owned, but in the past, our state agencies actually sold those canal lands off. And so now we're having to raise private dollars to actually go back and purchase those lands. And it just takes time. I mean, if one agency had all the resources to do it, they would go ahead and do it. But that's not the way it is. We have to do this through partnerships and collaborations. And we're just really blessed and fortunate that our community organizations and elected officials really understand the vision and importance. And they've made this a priority in their communities.
Well, one of the visions, obviously, at least here in Summit County, has been the Summit County Trail and Greenway plan. So tell us a little bit about that plan and how it ties into the Canalway.
It is an incredibly visionary document that provides a network of trails and green space so that no resident of Summit County is more than 5 or 10 minutes away from a neighboring trail connection. That's what the goal is. And the idea also is using the towpath trail as the spine. And so you have this tree trunk, and you have all these various branches that connect into Twinsburg and Hudson and Springfield and Lakemore. And that's the opportunity that we have. And we're really, again, very blessed and fortunate that for the past 8 years, the Summit County Council and Summit County Executive Russ Pry have provided us with some seed grant funding. And we've turned that right around into a grant program and provided grants to the city of Barberton, city of Cuyahoga Falls, and townships and villages, Bath Township throughout Summit County. And for every $1 of county investment, we've leveraged $14 of private, local, state, or federal investment.
How many visitors a year do you estimate use that Canalway?
approximately about 2.5 million users utilize the towpath trail. We've done pretty good record keeping of that. And that's not 2.5 million new users. I know you're down there a lot. I'm certainly down there a lot with our family as well. And but the important thing is the communities really embrace this as their towpath trail, their canalway.
Talk to us, if you would, for our viewers. I'd like them to better understand exactly how this resource is historically related to us, culturally related to us, and economically related to all of us.
That's another good question. When you look at the Ohio Erie Canal, it starts out as obviously as a transportation resource. That's what it was originally built for. And you have some of our partners who are very avid historians, and they're interested in the historic aspect of it. And some people say, why don't you go and recreate the canal? Well, and as I always say, that really isn't going to happen. It's not realistic. And that was what was once a great transportation resource is all of those things. It is a great historic resource. It is a great recreational resource. And I don't think the canal builders, when they built the canal and the towpath, would have imagined that we're spending literally millions of dollars to revitalize it and celebrate it, but we truly are. And then to your point, it's a tremendous natural resource. Now, instead of having canal boats down there or mules, you've got beaver, blue heron, kingfishers. I think when you and I were talking casually at a gathering recently, I told you about where we've actually had blue heron and actually beavers in downtown Akron, right along the towpath trail. And who would have thought of that? And then to me, that's one of the most exciting parts about this project is that what people maybe neglected as a forgotten resource, it's now being revitalized. And when I tell people that the Ohio Erie Canal goes right through the heart of downtown Akron, and you can actually walk along that, they're utterly amazed. And when we look at places like San Antonio, Texas, that have a recreated canal, we don't have to have something that's recreated. We have this jewel that really, thanks to Congressman Ralph Regula, Congressman John Seibling, and Mayor Bisquillick and Russ Pry, if we do this right, it's going to be here for another 180 years. And that's really what's humbling to be able to work on a project like that.
Well, I want to ask you, obviously, about partnerships, but I have to remind our television viewers that, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for the televised portion of this. But Dan and I are going to continue talking about the Ohio and Erie Canalway on NewsNite.net.